We are live. We are live. Hopefully, we are live here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. It's November 10th. It's week 11. Lots of drama going on in college football. Spotlight game of the week here at Peek Around the Corner is TCU in Texas. We're going to start off this show talking about that game. My thoughts on it. Put your thoughts down in the comments section below the video. Again, like always in our live shows at Peek Around the Corner, I start with the monologue. I go through a list of things I want to talk about. Then the rest of the show is directed by you, by all of you. We talk about what you want to talk. So please smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, share the video with your family and friends. If you want to donate to the channel to help us keep the lights on, hit that $sign in the chat, that super chat, put up your comment, and we'll do a deep dive in whatever you say, and that includes ripping on your host. First thing I want to do, like always, before I get into my monologue, I want to advertise the show real quick on Twitter, and then we'll get right to our monologue. We got a lot of things to talk about. We've got Texas TCU. We've got the rumors coming out of Madison, right? Potential transfer portal rumors coming out of Madison, Wisconsin. We're going to talk about the Pac-12. Why are they considering going to 8 conference games? I think I know the reason why. I think I do. I'm going to tell you what I think. Let me know what you think. And again, thank you, Maria. Looks good. All right. She says it looks good. Beautiful. That is our moderator. That is our moderator. She's called the Little General. So if anyone acts out, she's going to come down on you with an iron fist. Okay. We're also going to be talking about, everything. Everything. The Stanford Daily article that came out this week. We had a whole episode on that article. We're going to be talking about that tonight. And also going to be talking about, once again, college football reporters, the purest college football reporters, talking about how, once again, college football expansion playoffs, that's going to devalue the regular season, and that the LSU game last week in Baton Rouge, that was a real playoff game. And going into the college football playoffs, the expanded playoffs, that game won't hold as much value. Again, as you all know, I completely disagree with that take. I love those guys. Ari Wasserman, Josh Pate, great reporters, very entertaining to listen to, very knowledgeable. But the purists are wrong in this situation. The purists are wrong. Skull Ducky. Hello, Greg. Hello. Nice to see you in the house, Skull Ducky. Appreciate you coming in. First, let me get this show advertised on Twitter. And then I'm going to go into my monologue, and then I'm going to get all of your comments as much as I can. We have lots to talk about. Lots to discuss. Week 11. Just give me a minute. All right, I appreciate it. Here we go. People are coming in the chat. Let's get this thing going. First of all, again, I'm going to go through my monologue, and then the show is directed by you. It's directed by Skull Ducky, Mr. Oregon Duck. It's directed by anyone who comes in the chat, discuss anything they want, everything to do with college football. TCU, Texas. TCU, Texas. 4th ranked TCU. I think Texas is 18th ranked. That's the spotlight game of the week. We're doing one every single week as we get closer to who's going to make the college football playoffs, who's going to win their conference championships. TCU, I want to start out with TCU. Max Duggan. I love Max Duggan. I loved him when he was a high school football player because the Gophers were recruiting him so hard, and we had him. The Gophers had Max Duggan. I've talked to a lot of I got a lot of friends, Horn Frog friends on Twitter. We go back and forth. We go with DMs back and forth over the years. They know how much I love Max Duggan. I thought the Gophers were going to get him. We had him. And then Gary Patterson comes in the last moment and swipes him away from the Gophers. And if the Gophers would have had Max Duggan under PJ Fleck, like PJ Fleck wanted, Gophers would have won a Big Ten West title by now under PJ Fleck. PJ Fleck's doing a great job. Gophers have elevated the program. But if we would have had Max Duggan, that athletic ability, that arm, he is a gutsy player, man. He is something else. And what's strange about Max Duggan, well, first of all, he's completing 66% of his passes, 2,400 yards, 24 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 179.7. He's been injured throughout his career, but man, he plays through being hurt. And at the start of the season, Dykes, the new coach, TCU, and that coaching staff, they said that he wasn't the starter, that he didn't win the job, and then there was an injury to the starter that they selected. That whole thing is quite odd. I wasn't close enough to the situation. I wasn't watching TCU close enough. I remember it. I remember thinking to myself, my goodness, Max Duggan, he didn't win the starting job. And maybe he'll go in the transfer portal next year. And maybe the Gophers, I was already dreaming, right? But because of injury, Max Duggan got in there, was prepared, and look what this season he's having. And I couldn't be more happier for a guy because of what he's gone through and the injuries. And then TCU's got Kendra Miller. He's already got over 1,000 yards, averaging 6.6 yards per rush. And then we all know Quentin Johnston, their best receiver. But they've got other guys, the Barber, Savon Williams. They got other guys playing. And then their kicker, TCU has won a lot of close games, right? They've come back in these games. He hasn't missed a field goal. He's 4 for 4 from 40 to 49 yards. Griffin Kell, he's 41 of 42 extra points. And then linebackers, D. Winters, 6.5 sacks. TCU Horned Frogs, man, they got it going. And I'm going to be rooting for them. Nothing against Texas. I actually am not an anti-Longhorn guy. All right? But I'm rooting for TCU. I'm rooting for Max Duggan. Quinn Ewers, he's having a good year. He's having a good season. Again, for those who just joined in the chat for the very first time here, Peek Around the Corner, welcome in. I go through my monologue, then I'm going to get to all of your comments. You guys direct our live shows. Absolutely, you direct which way we're going to go. We're starting with the spotlight game, TCU and Texas. Quinn Ewers, 1,300 yards, recovering from injury, 57.8% pass completion, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a 141.7. Quinn Ewers is doing very well. He's doing good. This is his first season, right? We got to remember that. He didn't play for Ohio State. He comes in, transfers to Texas. Hudson Card's a very good backup. 6 touchdowns, 1 interception, almost 70% completion. But their whole offense is run by Bijan Robinson. Over 1,100 yards, 5.9 yards a rush, 12 touchdowns. And Xavier Worthy, stud receiver last year as a freshman. 40 catches, 552 yards, 9 touchdown passes. They got that great tight end Sanders, 39 catches, 450 yards. Jalen Ford, their linebacker. Get a load of these. Talking about a guy who does everything. Their linebacker, Jalen Ford, leads the team with 82 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles. He's doing it all for Texas. TCU versus Texas. I'm going with TCU. I think they win this game by a touchdown. Go Horned Frogs. Go Max Duggan. Get to the college football playoffs. Represent yourself and TCU. and get to that Heisman. He should be in that room. If he wins this game and TCU goes on to win the Big 12 championship, goes on to the college football playoffs, you better believe Max Duggan better be one of those guys invited to the Heisman trophy ceremonies. He better be, man. So that's my thoughts. Give me your thoughts down on TCU and Texas. Skull Ducky. I'm rooting for Texas. Need TCU to go down. Mr. Oregon Duck himself. He's being honest, everybody. He needs TCU to go down to give Oregon a pathway into the college football playoffs. Or everybody wants TCU to go down, pretty much, right? Except for Horned Frog fans, myself, your humble host. Some Big 12 fans probably want TCU to win, right? Oklahoma fans definitely want TCU to win, to beat Texas. But yeah, Oregon fans want TCU to lose. UCLA fans want TCU to lose. A whole bunch of them. LSU fans probably. But I've got TCU winning this game by a touchdown. Okay, so we got a report today. Again, going through my monologue. I'm going to get to your comments and questions here in a bit. Nice to see you, Rebecca, back in the house. Rebecca Salisbury. Washington Husky. She says rooting for TCU because it's Texas. And then she goes, go Huskies. Absolutely. Absolutely. Tony, what's the inside scoop? Tough Tony, always coming in with the tough questions. What's the inside scoop? Why is LSU only favored by 3.5 versus Arkansas? Wow. I don't know, Tony. I do not know. That line doesn't make any sense to me. None whatsoever. Unless Jaden Daniels is nicked up again, quarterback of LSU. That very well could be. If anyone knows why that line's only 3.5, let us know, because Arkansas is on the decline. Let me get to my through my monologue here. We got a lot of topics. Again, a report came out by Casano out there in Oregon, talking about how the Pac looks like there might be an announcement happening, according to his words, according to his report, that the Pac-12 may go to 8 games. It looks like they're going to 8 conference games, from 9 conference games to 8 conference games. Matt Higgins, nice to see you in the house. That's a great question. We got so much to talk about tonight. So much to talk about. So many things going on. Okay, Pac-12. I need to focus. Why is the Pac-12 going from 9 to 8 games? I think I know why. I'm going to give you my reasons why. We have no intel on this, okay? We don't really have any intel, negative intel. But I'm going to give you my reasons why. The same reason why ACC is probably going to stay to 8 games is the reason why Pac-12 is probably going to go from 9 to 8. And why it's a tough decision for SEC to go from 8 to 9 conference games, although I think ACC is going to 9. Peter Johnson says ACC is the answer, Greg. That may be part and parcel. That may be part of the answer. In other words, what Peter is alluding to is if the Pac goes 8 conference games, if they go to 9 to 8, it'd be easier to schedule that one non-conference game with the ACC, because ACC would be at 8 conference games, right? So they would have 4 non-conference games, and they can get into the scheduling agreement where they can make sure that an ACC school plays a Pac-12 school, and that can possibly elevate Pac-12's value, TV value, right? That might be part of the reason. But I think there's another reason, Peter and everybody else. And I think it has to go all the way back to what we've been talking about at Peek Around the Corner, that Nicole Auerbach brought up today, that Pete Thamel brought up today or yesterday. Not a whole lot of other people are talking about it. No there's so many good YouTube college football channels out there, but they're not talking about what I'm about to bring up. We've been talking about it, Peek Around the Corner. In fact, we brought it up too late. We should have talked about it weeks ago. But this question, the big elephant in the room about new college football playoffs, new distribution model, how are they going to settle it? What decision are they going to make? All 10 FBS conferences, the 5 G5 conferences, the 5 Power 5 conferences in Notre Dame, how are they going to distribute this huge new revenue that's coming in? Because right now, currently, in the current media contract for the 4-team college football playoffs, which is 3 games, with ESPN holding all the content, right now, it's weighed heavily towards 80% goes to Power 5 conferences. Okay, let's just talk about the Power 5 conferences. 80% of the revenue goes to Power 5 conferences, and it gets distributed evenly. And the other money that gets distributed is based on performance. But most of it is a flat fee being given evenly to the Power 5 conferences. So the SEC and the Pac-12, they get pretty much the same amount of money. I think it's $75 million, around $75 million per conference. And then there's added money depending on how many teams go to the college football playoffs. But right now, with all 10 FBS conferences and Notre Dame battling it out and discussing this new distribution model, and Pete Thamel said today, it might have been yesterday, I think it was today, he says it's unresolved. The issue is unresolved. And what I think is going on is I think the new contract is going to have way more weight to the performance of the conference and how much money they get, and less of this equal distribution among the Power 5. So I believe the Pac-12 is looking at saying to themselves, whoa, we're not going to get the advantage of having less teams in our conference than the SEC and the Big Ten. We're not going to get that same amount guaranteed money, whatever that is. Right? We're not going to get that same guaranteed money. Therefore, it's going to be based on performance, how many teams you get into the playoffs. Therefore, we're going to have less conference games. We're going to have less conference losses and take our chances in the non-conference schedule. Have 3 weaker opponents, and then maybe have a scheduling agreement with the ACC. And that's why I think the ACC is sticking with 8 conference games, that they're not bumping in 9 conference games, because they say, hey, ACC says to ESPN, hey, what if we go to 9 conference games? How much more money are you going to give us in that media contract? And then they get the figure, and it's not that much more. And then they think, wow, if we just stick here at 8, maybe we can get a few more teams in the conference playoffs, the expanded playoffs, and we're going to make so much more money. So that's why I think these schools, Pac-12 is going to 8, ACC is sticking at 8. That's my theory. Put down what you believe, why the Pac-12 is going from 9 to 8 conference games, according to Kazano. I think it was in yesterday's report. Get to a few of your comments. We still got a lot of other subjects to get to. Big night here at Peek Around the Corner. Big night. Just remember, please smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. And please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. If you want to donate to help us keep the lights on, hit that super chat button, that $sign, and we'll get to your comment as quick as possible and do a deep dive on it. Even if you're ripping on your humble host, Greg Pflugar. Mo and Vision, nice to see you once again, rooting for TCU because I wanted Big 12 in the college football playoffs. Go Bucks! Go Bucks! Yeah, I can understand that. And you know what? Not only have a Big 12 team in the college football playoffs, not only have a Big 12 team in the college football playoffs that's not named Oklahoma Sooners, not only have a Big 12 football team in the college football playoffs that's neither Oklahoma and Texas that are going to the SEC in 2025, but have a Big 12 college football team to go to the playoffs, be it TCU Horned Frogs, and win the first game ever of a Big 12 team winning a college football playoff game. That would be fantastic for the conference and, of course, for TCU. So, yes, a lot of people rooting for TCU. Skoldecky makes a comment. Letdown game is what they're expecting. I believe this has to do with why LSU is only favored by 3.5 points. Matt Higgins. Greg, interested in discussion on the Athletic article about the college football quarterfinals on campus. Also differences in 24-26 versus 26 plus on scheduling and revenue split. Wow, that's a big question. Let's get right to it, Matt Higgins. That's a great question. Quarterfinals on the campus. We did an episode on this yesterday. I believe it was episode 90. There was a report, I believe it's in the Athletic, about how there's steam. There's steam behind having not only the first round conference, not only the first round of the playoffs and the expanded playoffs be on campus, but the quarterfinals themselves. In the Athletic, they talked about how the bowls are having less and less power when they're negotiating, right, with the conferences, with all FBS conferences. Except for the Rose Bowl. There was a whole nother article on that by ESPN. Rose Bowl is still trying to get in, trying to have a permanent fixture in the playoffs. But to get to your question, Matt, there's this growing steam that they want not only that first round where the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th seeded team in the playoffs would have a home playoff game at their campus against 9, 10, 11, 12, that the second round would also have a game at the number 1 through 4 would have a home game at their campus stadium or wherever they choose to have their playoff game. That is huge. That's a huge change. That's a new development. I got a lot of pushback yesterday on the episode. And that's fine. That's fine. But that's a new development. That's a new wrinkle, right? And I think it affects Notre Dame more than anybody. Because now here's Notre Dame. And I'll get to the rest of your question in here in a second, Matt. Here's Notre Dame. Imagine this. It's those special seasons, right? It's those special seasons that these big helmet schools thrive on. They know they're not going to dominate the sport. They know they're going to have off years. But those big helmet schools, they know once in a while they're going to have that special season. Okay, so Notre Dame, as a football independent, has that special season. They go 12-0. They're ranked number 1 at the end of the year from the College Football Selection Committee. Okay, imagine this. Let's say it's 2027. Notre Dame, 12-0. Ranked number 1. So what do they get? They get ranked 5th for the playoff seedings because they're not a conference champion. They're not one of the top 4 ranked conference champions. So Notre Dame is number 5. They play a home game against the 12th seeded team. And then the following week, if they win that game, the following week, they have to go on the road to the 4th seeded team at the 4th seeded team's campus, not a neutral bowl game site, according to this new wrinkle that looks like it's being thrown in the playoffs. But Notre Dame would have to go to a fourth-rated team on their campus, their home field, after that fourth-rated team just didn't play last week. They got to rest. They got to bye. That's the pathway for a number one rated Notre Dame team. That special year that they would have once in a while. Does Notre Dame really want that? Just to keep their independent football status? I think it's definitely a new wrinkle for everybody to think about. That's why we brought it up at Peek Around the Corner, because it's new. And I think Notre Dame's getting pushed. I think these conferences are getting more and more powerful. NCAA is getting weaker. If these schools, Oklahoma's athletic director made comments in this article, there's a financial impact to have these games, that the quarterfinal games we played on home campus fields. They want this to happen. They want the drama. They want the money. They want it to be at home campus. Then the semifinals and the championship games would be played at neutral sites, bowl games, championship game, bowl game. So I think that's coming down the pike. I really do. And I think it puts more and more of a squeeze on Notre Dame. Also, the differences in 24 through 26 in scheduling and revenue split. The revenue split, we just talked about it. We're going to talk about it more. It's an ever-growing story. They need to have consensus. If they want to have, if these 10 FBF conferences, who still have holes in their budgets because of the pandemic year of 2020, if they want a college football playoffs to start in 2024, it has to be everybody agreeing to it. This revenue distribution, and it's a huge issue, and it's unresolved as of tonight, November 10th. And then the scheduling part, the scheduling's going to have to change. The season's going to have to move up a week, at least 1 week. The rival games, the last week rivalry games that end around Thanksgiving are going to have to be a week, going to have to be played a week before Thanksgiving. Okay. We'll go back to the questions. I hope that answers your question, Matt. Skoducky. They are tired of seeing conference cannibalize itself. Well, everybody does so, right? Every conference, there's the same amount of wins as there is losses, right, in conference play. That's just simple math. And I think the Pac-12, I think there is a concerted effort by the Big Ten and SEC not to have equal revenue split of the new playoff distribution, of the revenue distribution. I think there's a huge concerted effort behind the scenes. And so therefore it's going to go to more performance pay, and Pac-12's getting their ducks in the row, no pun intended, Skoducky, and they're going to try to get down to 8 conference games because they believe they'll probably make more money with this huge revenue that's coming in for the college football playoffs versus, losing a few more dollars on their tier 1, tier 2 deal because they dropped down 1 conference game. Tony, would networks pay less for 8 games than 9? Yes, they would. But again, I think that's more than made up. I think Pac-12 would be gambling on themselves to make more money in the new playoff system. I think that is what's going on. Opie, in LSU history, they always had problems after Bama games with injuries, emotional letdown, and Arkansas games are just some of the strangest outcomes. You're absolutely correct, Opie. Again, thanks for coming into the house. College football's Peek Around the Corner. Appreciate you. You are correct. That is a deep LSU history after the big Bama games. The emotion, the injuries, the emotional letdown. But man, Arkansas they've collapsed. They've collapsed. They just lost the Liberty. They're collapsing. Okay, Moen Vision, the Big Ten and SEC should ask more. Well, again, I don't know. Should they ask more? I believe they are going to ask more if it's just based upon a flat payout to each conference, because they have more schools in their conferences. But I think they're also looking for more money in the performance, more performance pay, more revenue going to performance. How many schools did a conference get into the college football playoffs? We'll see. It's a story that is huge, and it's got to be decided on quickly for there to be a college football playoff, expanded college football playoff starting in 2024. Tony, Oregon versus Washington is a huge game. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's going to be a great game. Very important. Very important. Of course, Tony comes back and says Oregon by 2 scores. I don't think Rebecca's going to be very happy with that statement from Skull Ducky. I don't think she's going to be very happy at all. She says Washington, Oregon is a big game. Tony, Craig, any thoughts on the coaching vacancies? Yeah, I got some thoughts. In fact, I'm going to tie that in with Wisconsin, the rumors coming out of Wisconsin today. A few episodes, I put out our final predictions, our final hot boards for Wisconsin, Arizona State, and Nebraska. That Nebraska thing, who knows? But we got Bill O'Brien. We got Bill O'Brien because, quite frankly, we think he fits what Trev Alberts wants. A guy who has coached in the Big Ten. I think Trev Alberts sees O'Reilly, the guy they got from Oregon State, and then Scott Frost. Those offenses, how they structured their roster, it did not work in the Big Ten. They were told it wasn't going to work in the Big Ten. You cannot do what you did in the American Athletic Conference or the Pac-12 and have it work in the Big Ten. It just doesn't work that way. Almost every school in the Big Ten has huge offensive line, defensive line, and if you come in with a finesse team and you play week after week after week in that conference play, you get beat up. And Nebraska never got big enough. They still haven't gotten big enough to play in the Big Ten. So I think it's our theory at Peek Around the Corner that Trev Alberts is going to grab someone who has coached in the Big Ten. O'Brien did with Penn State, and that's why we got that. And then Arizona State, we got Kenny Dillingham. People think I'm still crazy. That's fine. Maybe I'm crazy, or maybe I'm crazy like a fox. Dillingham has done a tremendous job at Oregon. I know Skoduck and other Oregon Ducks do not want Dillingham to get picked off so early when he's only 32 years old. He's just starting his offensive coordinator career. But he's fantastic. He's got so much respect. He's from Scottsdale, Arizona. We got Dillingham at Arizona State. And now Wisconsin. Let me spend a little bit of time on Wisconsin. And then I'll go back to your comments. Again, smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel. If you want to support our channel, hit the super chat, the $sign. We'll get to your comment right away. Share the video with your family and friends. Wisconsin. Braylon Allen, a huge running back, a fantastic running back for the Wisconsin Badgers. It's his second year. He's had a little bit of nicked up injuries, right? It's been nicked up a bit. He had a great year last year. He's a year younger than his class. So last year he had just turned 18 at the end of the season. So he's probably going to be 19 or turning 19 soon. Now, he was very upset that when Paul Chryst, the head coach, was fired middle of the season. He made that known in public. That's not a rumor. That's known in public. I believe it was today, possibly started yesterday. There was a Michigan Wolverine site that put out a story, a rumor, that Braylon Allen was possibly thinking about transferring to Michigan. And then other people jumped on that report, that rumor, and said maybe Allen's thinking about transferring to USC, or that he's definitely getting ready to jump in that transfer portal. leave Madison and go somewhere else. And the evidence that they put forward is when you lose a head coach, when you lose your head football coach, you have a 30-day window. Those student athletes have a 30-day window to get into the transfer portal. Those 30 days came and went. Jim Leonard was the defensive coordinator. He's the interim head coach. I believe he's going to be the new head coach, but it hasn't happened yet. He hasn't been named yet. And according to many people out there, right, the rumors are spreading, speculation. Again, we have no intel at Peek Around the Corner. But Braylon Allen, they're a great running back for Wisconsin. Will be an NFL second, third round draft pick after next year. He has one more year of college football. Braylon Allen has started following running back coaches. Mike Hart of Michigan, running back coach of USC and others. And he started following them outside of the 30-day window, or at least some of them, which means people are speculating that Allen had some communication with some coaches in that 30-day window, possibly, and now he's starting to follow some of them. I know a lot of Wisconsin Badger fans are upset that this is going on, that other schools are poking around Badger players, because there's uncertainty who's going to be the next head coach of Wisconsin. This is the new world of college sports, of college football. I do not like mid-season meddling of football players in college football. However, I do support players being able to move and better themselves as they see fit. Just like the head coaches, the assistants, the staffs. I believe the student athletes should have the same pathway to better themselves. Until that day comes when these student athletes become more of a professional, where it becomes a job, where they become an employee of the athletic department, where they sign a contract, where they can't move just like an NFL player. Until that day happens, I think these student athletes should be able to get the freedom of moving on if they don't like their situation. I know it's tough as a football fan, especially as an old traditional fan like myself and many of you are. As a Golden Gopher, we lost Bucky Irving to Oregon Ducks. Bucky Irving was a running back last year for the Golden Gophers, true freshman, and he was fantastic. He was getting all the playing time possible. The Gophers run the ball more than anybody else, so why would he leave? Because Mohamed Ibrahim, great Heisman, Mo Heisman, was coming back for another year, and Bucky said, I want the rock, so he went to Oregon. So this is going to happen. This is going to happen everywhere, at every level. The Gophers have been able to pick up some great FCS players. FCS players want to better themselves, so they move up to programs like Minnesota. But Wisconsin, they're going to lose their good players. It just hurts so much that they lose them to a great program within the conference like Michigan. That's where it really stings. But this is the new college football. This is the new college football, college sports. So, Wisconsin, I think Jim Leonard, Dillingham, Arizona State, Nebraska, O'Brien. I think Auburn, to answer that last question, Tony, I think Auburn has a lot of choices. And I think Hugh Freeze is on top of that list. Deion Sanders is on top of that list. I question why West Virginia is keeping Neil Brown throughout the whole season. That doesn't make any sense. Unless they're hard up for cash at West Virginia, they don't want to do the full buyout. But I shouldn't say a whole bunch, but a few schools have been able to cut in line of West Virginia. Neil Brown, is not the answer. Good coach, great guy, but he's not the answer at Morgantown. They're going to get trampled on. They're going to lose more guys in the portal. They're not going to be able to get guys in the portal. They're going to lose the recruiting battles that they're now in. If Neil Brown sticks around, they should have cut him off, let him go a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I do not like what Lyons is doing to that West Virginia football program. That proud West Virginia program that's so important to that state, to that university. That's the one call I have to say an athletic director screwed up on. Shane Lyons. Should have let Neil Brown go a couple weeks ago. Rebecca. The playoffs should be just modeled after FCS playoffs and move on. That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. And maybe with the diminishing bowls, the importance of these bowl games, maybe the playoffs jump to 16 after this next contract. They're going to 12, though. They're definitely going to 12, right? They're going to 12. They're not going to go to 16 in this iteration of the college football expanded playoffs. Rebecca, have the losers play. Whoops, I lost my question. I'm getting way behind in the comments. I apologize. Okay. Skoducky, playoffs should be at school stadiums minus the national champ. I think that's pretty much how it's going to be, except for the semifinals are also going to be at neutral stadiums, not at the campus. Matt Higgins, I hear scheduling windows is an issue facing the 12-team college football playoffs, 24 and 25. Do the commissioners have the stones to stand up to the Rose Bowl? What about the NFL? They're going to have to. They're just going to have to do that. Rose Bowl's in a tough spot, and they're just going to have to go head-to-head with NFL at some point. Daniel, nice to see you, my brother from another mother. Mr. Hoosier is in the house. Daniel, Mr. Hoosier is in the house. He says, blah, Notre Lame. Rebecca, wonder if they would have the game at a G5 stadium if they finished fourth like Cincinnati last year, or move it to a larger stadium. How I understand it, Rebecca, that's a great question. Let's say it is Cincinnati. Pretty much, Cincinnati has a pretty big stadium as it is. But let's say Tulane would come in fourth. Let's say Tulane was the fourth highest conference champion. They do not have a big stadium there in Louisiana, in New Orleans. That team who has the home game, they do have the option of having it in their home stadium, the campus stadium, or they can choose a whole nother stadium that's close to that they would have the advantage. So these schools do have an option. It doesn't have to be at their campus. Daniel, TCU will make the final game. They're good. The close games have given them an edge in experience versus everyone else. I agree, Daniel. I agree. If they run the table, they are in the playoffs. Tony, give Notre Dame half a share for the first 6 years when they're forced to join. Yeah, and we haven't even touched upon the whole Notre Dame situation in regards to the playoff distribution. I think Notre Dame's getting squeezed. I really do. Of course, Big Ten wants them. ACC has always done anything Notre Dame wanted them to because Notre Dame needed them so bad. But I think ACC is just washing their hands of the whole thing because they know at this point Notre Dame's not going to join them no matter what. Notre Dame is in the... It was reported that Notre Dame is in the Big Ten TV contract. If Notre Dame ever decides to join the Big Ten, the numbers are already sitting there, and there's no way the ACC can match it. So I think maybe ACC's even putting the squeeze on Notre Dame. Maybe the ACC's even saying, yeah, okay. quarterfinal games at home campus, top 4 seeds. Okay, we're in too. We agree with that. And Notre Dame's sitting around there being the only one sitting there with their hands up in the air going, wow, this is not looking good for us. We don't like this situation. I think that's what's going on. Daniel, Notre Dame should be treated like a one-team G5 conference. Highest ranked G5, including Notre Dame, they get a G5 one-school share unless they make the playoffs. Wow, Daniel, you're bringing in the hammer. In other words, what Daniel's saying is, like in the current college football playoff distribution model, 80% goes to the Power 5 schools, 20% goes to the, 80% of the revenue goes to the Power 5 conferences, 20% goes to the G5 conferences. And I think what Daniel is saying is Notre Dame would just be one of the G5 schools. They would get that amount of money. They'd get the same amount of money as Appalachian State in the Sun Belt. Daniel, coming in like a Hoosier that he is. Rebecca, Daniel, if that happens, Notre Dame would just join the conference because those conferences wouldn't want to count for their allotted shares. There's a lot of reasons, lots of reasons out there why Notre Dame should join a conference. But that one reason they all grasp onto, Rebecca, you and I, we've heard those comments in Twitter, right? Because they want to keep that independent status. It's part of their branding, right? And it is. I just think I happen to think a whole lot of Notre Dame fans undervalue their brand. Notre Dame is a huge brand, huge value, regardless of independent status. If they were in the SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Notre Dame would still be Notre Dame. I think they overvalue their independent status. And the world is changing on them. Mona Vision, Nebraska should hire Luke Fickell. Wow, Luke Fickell, I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think it's going to happen. That'd be terrible for my Minnesota Golden Gophers. Selfishly speaking, I can't allow that to happen. Mo and Vision. Luke Fickell would be a great pick. I'm just going to skip over that because I do not want that to happen. Skull Ducky. Tilly is ours. Kenny Dillingham, offensive coordinator. Oregon Ducks. Look what he has done for Bo Nix. Look what he has done. He's a superstar. Dillingham is a superstar. And Skull Ducky, you can defend me on this. We had Dillingham as the number 1 guy for Arizona State, the very first hot board. And we got so much blowback, not just from Oregon fans, I don't want to lose them, but from Arizona State fans who say, no way, we're not taking Dillingham. He's too young, doesn't have the experience. We need somebody, we need a big name. We need to go big whale hunting. Now, if you read those message boards, Sun Devil, Arizona State message boards, those fans want Dillingham. They've seen what he's done at Eugene, Oregon. They've seen what he's done with Bo Nix. We shall see. Will Arizona State take a 33-year-old offensive coordinator? I think they should. Matt Higgins, Georgia, Tennessee had 13 million viewers. And it wasn't a very competitive game. And they still got 13 million. Same as an average 1 o'clock Eastern NFL game. Playoff games would draw more, especially in exclusive windows. I agree with you, Matt. Absolutely. I wonder how many viewers Ohio State and Michigan's going to get. That thing could be 20 million. That's just going to be a huge game. Tough Tony comes in with Iowa versus Wisconsin. Who's going to win? I hope they both lose. I have no idea. No idea. I mean, there's other rumors about Wisconsin's locker room not being tight. I don't know if that's connected with the other Braylon Allen stuff. Iowa's starting to come on a little bit. I guess if I had to bet your money, I'd take Iowa. I would take Iowa's going to win, but I have no idea. I'm just hoping the Gophers get the job done against the Northwestern Wildcats. That's what I'm focusing on this Saturday. Rebecca, transfer portal is basically a free agency. NCAA needs to create some actual rules to prevent midseason poaching. Yeah, it's the midseason stuff that gets me. There should be no communication. None whatsoever. I know that these players are not employees of their athletic departments. Not yet. Not today. But they still signed they still have a scholarship. I mean, there's some stuff written on a piece of paper that says that they're part of a certain athletic program, part of a certain university. NCAA does have more rules coming in with NIL. They're trying to enforce it. They just don't have the staff to enforce it. Yeah, it's the midseason stuff that gets me. We'll see what happens in Wisconsin. We'll see what happens with Mr. Allen. Tough Tony heard some positive talk about Jeff Munkin, the coach at Army. Any news on him? I haven't heard anything. Not a word of it. Again, he would fit what Trev Alberts is looking for. Wisconsin has, this is going to sound horrible. I'm going to say this. This is going to sound bad. So for those who are in the chat room or watching, who are not Big Ten fans or alumni of Big Ten schools, this is going to sound horrible when I say this. But I'm being as honest as I possibly can. Nebraska Cornhuskers have to conform to the Big Ten. They can have their own little flavor, their own little twist, but they have to become a Big Ten football program. It's the same speech I'm going to give to UCLA and USC in a couple years. And with Oregon and Washington if they join in a couple years. It's different in Big Ten. Nebraska can't. Scott Frost brought a bunch of speed guys in. But each week they're playing in these fields with long grass, wind in the Midwest, big offensive defensive line, and that speed on the outside doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you can't stop anybody, when you're just getting bowled over by Wisconsin's offensive line that puts 4 players in the NFL draft almost every year. Iowa's offensive line was. Now, Minnesota's elevated their trenches, and then you go play the Big Ten East teams, and you're just getting crunched. Last 2 hires that Nebraska had didn't establish any type of Big Ten football. In fact, Scott Frost hires, I don't know, I think it was Scott Frost. He hires Mark Whipple, offensive coordinator from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Panthers had a great year last year. Kenny Pickett had a great season. Kenny Pickett becomes a first-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mark Whipple in his mid-60s, great job, right? He comes to Nebraska. Before the season started, head coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers, Narduzzi, on some sports radio broadcast or some interview, he says, yeah, Mark Whipple's gone. I'm paraphrasing. Mark Whipple's gone, but he didn't want to run the ball enough. He didn't like to run the ball. Man, when I heard that, it was like, oh no, Nebraska screwed up again. Sure enough, they don't consistently try to establish the running game. They do it more under Mark Ripple than the previous Scott Frost years when Scott Frost did the play calling for Nebraska, but they still don't. Grant, their running back, had a great first half against the Gophers last week. Minnesota couldn't run the ball. Second half, Mo Ibrahim crushed the Cornhuskers, and Nebraska quit running the ball. And they were throwing, and the quarterbacks, they're not Joe Montana out there. Logan Smothers, Chubba Purdy. The offense made no sense. And I'm not blaming Mickey Joseph. He's got what he has, Mark Whipple. But Nebraska has to get a guy, a coach who's committed to playing some Big Ten football. Jeff Munkin would be one of those guys. Now, he would go to the triple option. He would have to have a little bit of a passing game, have to have a little bit of a downfield passing game in Big Ten. But Munkin's a lot better name than a lot of the other names I'm hearing out there for Nebraska. Nebraska's got to go Big Ten football. That's why I think, and Trev Alberts knows this. He has said this in public. That's why I think it's going to be Bill O'Brien. Chances of me being right? Probably 5%. There's so many names out there. But I think it's going to be Bill O'Brien. I think it has to be somebody who knows Big Ten football. I know that sounds horrible, everybody. Just got to give you my honest opinion here at Peek Around the Corner. Opie, I know that the old SEC commissioner, Mike Silva, had banded him for a while from coaching the SEC. I think you're talking about Hugh Freeze. I think Hugh Freeze, yeah, okay, then Opie says Hugh Freeze. Okay, in my opinion, and I think most people share it, you can have doubts about Hugh Freeze, but I think he's paid his dues. Hopefully he's learned his lesson. I know what about, I don't know, it's probably been 6 weeks ago. We did get in some intel. We had an episode on it. We talked about it in the live show that there's a couple people in the money perch, sitting on the money perch, Morgantown money perch, West Virginia donors, that wanted Hugh Freeze to they wanted Hugh Freeze to be processed by Shane Lyons in West Virginia. They wanted there to be an opportunity for Hugh Freeze to have his redemption story told in Morgantown, that's what their words were, and not somewhere like Auburn. Now we are, 6 weeks later? West Virginia hasn't even fired Neil Brown. Hugh Freeze signed I think it was an 8-year contract with Liberty. A little bit bigger buyout. I think Hugh Freeze is totally out of reach from West Virginia. I do not think Hugh Freeze would be the next West Virginia head coach. I think it could be Auburn. Hugh Freeze is going to have an opportunity somewhere at a big Power 5 football program. Unless something more stuff comes out about him. He's a heck of a coach. Everybody knows he's a heck of a coach. So, this is an interesting one. Rebecca, Tony, I heard Georgia Tech was thinking of the Army coach, Jeff Monken. Would Georgia Tech go back to that triple option offense they had under Coach Johnson? Possibly. That's a very interesting comment, Rebecca. Very interesting. Thanks for letting us know about that. Tony, will there be any more Big Ten job openings after the season? That's a great question by Tony. Will there be any more Big Ten? Let's go down the list. Illinois, no. Purdue, if Louisville job opens up, you can see Jeff Brom taking Louisville, and that would open up Purdue. So that's a possibility. No on Minnesota, no on Northwestern. Wisconsin's already open. Iowa, gonna have to say no on Iowa because the athletic director, no on Iowa. In the East, Loxley coming back, Mel Tucker's coming back, Shiano's coming back. Unless Franklin, nobody in the East, unless Franklin takes a job elsewhere. So my answer on that, Tony, would be no, unless Brom leaves to Louisville or Franklin, who's always a threat to go somewhere every year. Unless Franklin leaves or Brom leaves to go somewhere else, I'm going to say no on that. That's my guess on it. David Hall, welcome, sir. Welcome back in the house. What do you think about the new Conference USA TV deal? More Tuesday, Wednesday night games. I feel bad for the fans. I don't know, David. I feel I can understand what you're saying. For those who don't know, Conference USA just signed a new media deal. They're going to have Tuesday and Wednesday night games during the month of October. As we know, in the month of November, the MAC Conference has their November games on Tuesdays and Wednesday night. They've been having double headers for the last couple of weeks. It gives the MAC Conference more exposure than if they wouldn't do that. Same with Conference USA. They're actually getting out, getting more exposure for their teams. I just feel like it's a good deal overall, David. I understand what you're saying. I understand the sentiment. It sounds like they're going to get paid a little bit more than the first reported $750,000 per school. It sounds like it's going to be more, about $800,000 per school. I think overall it's a pretty good deal. They're still going to get paid a little bit less than the MAC Conference. The MAC Conference schools get paid a little bit more than that. I often wonder, as I sit here in the state of Minnesota, I look at that North Dakota State football program, that great FCS football program. We've seen other FCS programs move up to FBS, Sam Houston State, for example, and I just wonder if North Dakota State's going to make that jump. And I don't think they would make that jump for Conference USA money. I don't think they'd make that jump for MAC money. I'm wondering if the Mountain West would have interest in North Dakota State. But every time I see a deal like this, I think of North Dakota State needing, they want to, I shouldn't say that. There's been reports out there just in the last couple of weeks that they're looking into moving into FBS. When you have this huge new conference football playoff money coming into these G5 conferences, we don't know how much yet, yearly. I think North Dakota State probably wants a piece of that. We shall see. North Dakota State, South Dakota State Jackrabbits. We shall see. Skull Ducky, Oregon can hang with the Big Ten. They can hang with the Big Ten, Skull Ducky, on a game per game, like a game basis here and there. But if you play a Big Ten conference schedule, that's where I disagree with you. Oregon would have to change it up as well. They just would. And you're going to see that, Skull Ducky, with UCLA and USC. Matt Higgins, I hear Dan Lanning is on Auburn's short list. He may be on Auburn's short list. I don't think Dan Lanning has Auburn on his list. I think Lanning's going to stay at Oregon for a while. Skull Ducky, we proved that when we went into the shoe and surprised the world. Yes, but that's a one-game, isolated football game. You play a Big Ten schedule, you got to beef up. You got to beef up. Rebecca also disagrees with me. I would say the size that Washington, Oregon, UCLA have, they'll be fine in the Big Ten. Daniel agrees with Rebecca. Yes, Rebecca. So it looks like I'm home on an island. I'm just going to say this to you all. I heard the same comments from Nebraska fans when they joined from the Big 12. We're big enough. We're so much faster. And now when you listen to Steve Sipple, when you listen to Callahan, when you listen to all those Nebraska beat writers, they'll tell you. They've said it this year. They've said it all these years. They've said, wow, we're off base. No, you have to get big because when you play Big Ten schedule week after week after week after week. And if you don't have that 295, 300-pound defensive tackle, backup defensive tackle, you get worn down, you can't compete anymore at the end of the season. But I acknowledge everybody in the chat room disagree with me. That's a beautiful thing about Peek Around the Corner. Okay. Tony asks, Go Ducky, why does Oregon have a hard time holding on to coaches? It seems like a great place to work. It is a fantastic place to work. You know, why that question was to Skull Ducky. I'll let him answer it. Mo and Vision, Luke Fickell knows Big Ten football. Yes, he does. He absolutely does. That's a big name. If Nebraska can get him, I will not be liking it. I will not be liking it at all. But that's a big name. Skull Ducky does answer the question. He says, I mean, historically, we haven't had an issue the last two coaches left for the dream job. But I don't see Dan Lanning leaving. I don't think so either. Matt Higgins, surprised Todd Monken, the Georgia offensive coordinator, isn't on more list. That's a good name. I haven't seen him on any list. That's a very good point, Mr. Higgins. Skull Ducky, I think Dan and Dilly both get a pretty decent raise at the end of the season. Yes, Skull Ducky. Dillingham will get a big raise at the end of the season. From the Arizona State Sun Devils, because that's where he's going. That's where he's going. Tony, I hope in the future Goldie plays the LA schools in November at home. Yes, so this Saturday it's going to be 30 degrees. 2 days from now, it's going to be 30 degrees northwestern Minnesota. Next week, it's going to be 27 degrees when Iowa comes to Minneapolis. I would love it if 2024, that first Big Ten schedule with USC and UCLA, that there's that second or third week in November where it's UCLA versus Minnesota. That would be beautiful. Because it's cold here in November in Minneapolis. Lennis 31, Fickell ain't leaving Cincinnati. Nice to see you in the house, Lennis 31. I don't think Fickell's leaving Cincinnati for Nebraska. Don't think that's going to happen. We got Bill O'Brien in Nebraska. Matt Higgins, I don't think any Big Ten coach is leaving the conference for any school unless it's in the SEC. Too much money in the Big Ten. I agree, and I also think that about the SEC coaches. Don't think they're going anywhere except for SEC schools. Skull Ducky, look at the blue chip ratio, and only Ohio State has a higher ratio. Yep, I understand your argument, Skull Ducky, and I love your passion. Love your passion. Lennis 31. Fick is looking to build a power in Cincinnati, the Big 12, especially with his family in the area. I agree with you, Lennis 31. Absolutely. Rebecca, Nebraska wasn't that good and has had a poor recruiting, though. Nebraska's had good recruiting classes when you consider the rankings. But what they've done a really bad job in is that offensive-defensive line. It's different in the Big Ten. But I acknowledge Rebecca disagrees with me. So does pretty much everybody else in the chat. So I can't wait to see UCLA, USC in the Big Ten. And of course, we at Peek Around the Corner believe Oregon and Washington will be joining someday. Someday. They're going to keep swinging. They're going to keep trying to get in. And we know there's interest. Speaking of Pac-12 schools, we haven't gotten to the big story. The big story of yesterday. Let me see if I can pop this up without ruining the... Here's the Stanford Daily. We had a big episode on this yesterday. We're just going to hit it here in the live show. Stanford president says conversations about athletic conference landscape are underway at the faculty senate meeting. About athletic conference landscape. Confidential conversations are underway about the change in landscape of athletic conferences, the university president said at Thursday faculty senate meeting. So that was last week, not today. Responding to a faculty senator question about conference realignment, university president discussed how student athletes at UCLA and USC, which will both join the Big Ten Conference in 2024, would be affected by much more travel. Then he said that these considerations were very concerning to us as we look at this landscape. Then he says, President confirmed that the conversations about media rights are already ongoing with the Pac-12 after a recent lawsuit filed against the NCAA opened that possibility of student athletes monetizing their own brand. There's a lot of things happening behind closed doors right now, the president said. I'm not at liberty to divulge those except to say that the 10 universities are focused on working with our commissioner to strike a deal that would be good for our conference, but more importantly, good for our student athletes. And this is where it gets interesting. At the same meeting, civil and environmental engineering professor Jeff Kossoff, the faculty's athletic representative, and Bernard Muir, athletics director, discussed the state of the university's athletic program, including some of the significant challenges and changes facing collegiate athletes nationwide. Kossoff said his role includes making sure athletes are able to participate fully in both their academic and athletic pursuits while at Stanford. It goes on in this article, and we had a big episode on it. I think it was episode 89, so you could go back and watch the whole thing. But basically, Kossoff pointed out the huge gap in money between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And that it could be up to $50 million right here. Big Ten makes significantly more for media rights, which could result in an extra $50 million per school per year. It has enormous consequences for our student athletes, so it's not an issue that can be taken lightly. Then here, I'm going to finish off this article by reading this paragraph. This is the president saying this. He then explained Stanford's parameters in making a conference change decision. From a Stanford point of view, what we want is to make sure that we can continue to provide an exceptional academic and athletic experience to our extraordinary student athletes and also be part of a competitive conference that is stable and also financially viable. What time frame exactly is unclear, but negotiations are ongoing. Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. That article once again. We're talking about Oregon, Washington. Stanford, in that article, the points that I think a lot of people are missing is how the athletic director and the professor who represents the faculty when it comes to things in athletics, they understand that the student athlete is going to be highly inconvened by the traveling, but also that Stanford's going to make so much more or less of the Big Ten. And there really isn't an answer for that. Once there isn't an answer for that, Pac-12 doesn't have an answer for that to close that gap with the Big Ten and the SEC by expansion or by other things related to the Pac-12. Of course, you're always going to look at different revenue streams, trying to increase your revenue streams. You got to try to strike the best deal you can right now for the Pac-12. But there really is no answer to close that gap. And that article, I think, is probably one of the most underreported articles I have seen in the last 6 months. People didn't understand what was going on at USC in the spring when we try to tell everybody. Some media companies, some people listen to us because we sent off information to USC 247 and Minnesota 247, and they did listen to us. They understood what was about to happen. But national reporters, they ignored us. We sent the information out to everybody. Same thing here. This article is underreported. This is about 2 tracks. Stanford looking at the possibility of trying to get the best deal for the Pac-12, working with the other Pac-12 universities. But the other track is Stanford still having discussions with the Big Ten. They doesn't say it there in black and white, but you better believe it. They're still having discussions. Oregon's still having discussions. Washington's still having discussions. It doesn't mean that the Big Ten has put the hands. It doesn't mean that the Big Ten still doesn't have the pause button pushed on further expansion at this time, because we believe they do, especially when you consider that the new conference football playoff revenue distribution model hasn't been decided on. That has to be decided before any other dominoes fall. And that probably even includes San Diego State, possibly going to the Pac-12, possibly going to the Big 12. So that big elephant in the room, that has to be decided on. But they're talking. They're talking. They're going to continue to talk. Oregon, even if they sign a Pac-12 media deal, they're going to continue to talk with the Big Ten. That's how serious all this is. That Stanford Daily article is the most underreported article I have seen since everybody underreported what was going on at USC in March of this spring. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. I won't be able to get to all your questions. Tony says Stanford has a $15 billion endowment. Their athletic department is on firm ground, one would think. Actually, if you read the article and subsequent reporting of it, Stanford doesn't take their money from their endowments into athletic departments. Most universities do not. Most universities' endowment are tied to something else, specifically tied to certain areas of research and this and that, not to the athletic department. And Stanford's losing money. And Stanford has the second most sponsored varsity sports. They have 36. Only Ohio State has 37. Stanford has over 800 student athletes. No, Stanford has the same motivations that Texas and Oklahoma had when they called the SEC. Stanford has the same motivations as when USC and UCLA called the Big Ten. Stanford has the same motivations as Oregon and Washington when they called the Big Ten after the June 30th announcement was made, when Oregon and Washington met with the Big Ten officials in August, and they continue to talk with Big Ten. No, Stanford, again, read that article. Read the Stanford Daily article of last week. Of this week. Most underreported article I have seen since the spring of a few months ago. Opie, we need now 17th to get here so things can get moving with UCLA and everything else with the fellow. Opie is talking about that November 15th and November 17th University of California Board of Regents meeting, where it sounds like they're going to decide either to stop UCLA from moving to the Big Ten or give them a big toll tax or do nothing at all. Yes, that's another domino that has to fall before anything else happens. Opie, you put it perfectly. David Hall, do you see SEC expanding further west, especially if the Big Ten grows again? If the ACC is off the table for another 14 years, would they have any interest in Four Corners? I don't think SEC is looking to expand anytime until ACC schools become available. Tony, Stanford hates fun and football. I got to give you one of these. Okay. Rebecca, what's the over-under for the Stanford tree getting suspended in a 5-year span within the Big Ten? I don't know. Those California schools, I don't know. Well, that's it for tonight. Thank you all for joining us at Peek Around the Corner live show November 10th. We have a great week of games coming up here in week 11. The marquee game, the spotlight game of the week, Texas versus TCU. We got TCU. It's going to be a great game. I'm rooting for the Horned Frogs, for Mac Duggan. Before you leave this live show, please smash that like button, share the video with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so by now. Please do that. Until next time, from all of us at Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much.